live stream for Friday, February 23rd. We talked yesterday about doing technical questions today. So we will open the live stream to technical questions. I do think I am telling folks right now that we're up to 3 weeks out. It is my expectation that next week we will start to catch up. But what's funny is like weekends kind of change everything. We were like a couple of days ago on the 21st, we were working on machines on the 1st and the 2nd. I think yesterday we were working on machines that came in on the 8th. So in theory, we're still about 2 weeks out, but I'd rather tell you 3 weeks and have it be 2 weeks than tell you 2 weeks and have it be 3 weeks. How about that? So if you drop a machine off now, I'm going to tell you between 2 and 3 weeks. And I think it's probably more close to 2 weeks. But anyways, 3 weeks. That's what we're going to call it. So Michelle, with a good one right out of the gate. How often should you change your needle? That is a good question. And so my answer to that is more often than you are. And so I've got a couple of different ways to answer that. One would be the official response is every 8 hours of sewing. So, however, that's 8 hours of sewing. And so you use your needle a significantly greater amount more when you are embroidering than you are when you're sewing. So a number of years ago when Nikki Brazel was here, she was asked that question, and I loved her response, which was, you certainly need to change your needle in between every embroidery. So, I mean, if you're doing a little 4x4, maybe that's not the case. But she went on to say, a lot of you ladies have $15,000 or $20,000 sewing machines, and you're worried about a dollar needle. I understand expensive needles can add up if you're sewing a lot. But if you're driving a Ferrari, you're putting high test in it. And if you're driving a lot, that's just the expense of business. So her response was definitely every project. And so in my experience, a lot of problems are solved by better needles. And so and not just like using better needles. What I mean is like changing needles. You'd be amazed how many times somebody comes in and they're like, my stitches don't look great. And the first thing I do at the counter is I put a new needle in and then we stitch and it looks great. So the official line from Brother is every 8 hours of sewing. I would cut that number in half for sure in embroidery. But, you know, just change it more than you do. I think if Jeannie was here, and this is not to speak ill of Jeannie, but I think I remember Jeannie saying one time I answered this question on one of these technical question days. Jeannie's like, I change it when when something's wrong or when it doesn't sound right. I'll actually go as far as saying you need to change it. Like it actually even sounds different when the needle's going bad. So how often should you change your needle? More often than you want to. And like I said, like 8 hours of sewing or 4 hours of embroidery, I think would be a good benchmark. Or as Nikki Brazel used to say, every time you start a new project. My machine shut down in the middle of stitching, reset, turned itself back on, lost the design I was working on. So, that stinks. I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know if there's a question based in that or if you're just telling us about your unfortunate experience. And this isn't to make light of your experience. A couple things I would point out. The reality is these sewing machines are large computers. They shut down sometimes. So if this was happening a lot, I would say I'd want to see the machine to see if we could figure out why it was happening. If it's a one-time thing, sometimes the machine derps out, and it shouldn't be something that happens with any kind of frequency. Reasons why it might have happened. Corruptions in the design. Sometimes if the embroidery unit and the machine are not perfectly aligned, like I think actually, Heather, interestingly enough, I think you said something the other day about the fact that you actually had to do something to get the machine to be perfectly lined up. Like maybe you had a pad under one side of the machine and not under the other side of the machine. If you disconnect your embroidery unit from the machine, whether you're sewing or embroidering, the machine will restart. And that doesn't count as shutting the machine off and restarting the machine. That is literally, it causes the machine to reset, and you can lose your design in the middle of something like that. That might be something worth looking into. I don't know if that's the case, and I don't know if I'm making that up in my head, but for some reason I think I'm remembering Asuli asking a question about having a pad under her machine, or asking if she could put a pad under her machine, and you saying that you actually had to set it up. It is very important that the machine sits flat. And like it's so important, in fact, that like recently I had a customer that bought one of the high-end machines that was calling me about all these issues, and I kept going, is your table flat? Is your table flat? Is your table flat? And she was like, I just bought the table. I just bought the table. I just bought the table. And at the very end of the conversation, we realized the table was bowed, and it was causing all kinds of issues. So, that is something that I would wonder about. But the reality is the machines are computers, and there can be a hiccup. If it was something that happened more than once, I'd be more concerned, and I would be like, we would start what I call chasing our tail, trying to figure out what's going on with the machine. But it is, if it's only happened once and it's the only time it's ever happened, I would chalk it up to a fluke and go from there, and maybe look at whether or not the machine was perfectly aligned. Because like I said, if the machine's bowed, or if it doesn't sit flat, or if something just disconnects for a second, that's going to cause the machine to reset. Did you mail all the quilt through the seasons? I don't know if that counts as a technical question, but I'm working on it. That's been one of the primary focuses. I can't tell you how many more I haven't mailed. I've gotten through a huge number of them, but they're all, I would expect them all to be mailed out over the next number of days. Is it safe to use automatic needle threader when using a 65-9 needle? No, it is not. They say, I think the official line from Brother is a 70-10. That said, I don't like the idea of using the needle threader smaller than a 75-11, but I think the official line from Brother is 70-10. So 65-9 will definitely run the risk of damaging your needle threader. You can go as big as you want, and 110-18 needle on the Luminaire is absolutely fine to use. My concern, the only concern I would have at that point, is the size of the thread. If you're using really, really, really thick thread, that can cause an issue. So I guess, like, will the needle threader work on 110-18 needle? Absolutely it will. But one of my concerns would be, are you using that needle because the thread is super thick? And if that was the case, then I would be a little bit more concerned about the needle threader. I will most certainly tell Jeannie hello for everybody. Jeannie's on a transition day. Like, I think Jeannie yesterday was like, I don't know if I could do this. This morning, she's like, I think I can do this. She's struggled a bit this week. It's been tough. So she very well may make an appearance in the live stream tomorrow. Will I damage my long arm machine if I use it without having used it for 4 years? Or do I need to figure a way to get it to a local dealer? It's massive, so I can't move it myself. That is a loaded question. And so I'm going to try to answer your question, Christy, while also talking a little bit about machine sitting. And Dudica, in the meantime, if you could tell me what kind of machine you have, that would be helpful. This is something I run into in the store all the time. People come in and machines are locked up or they're not working. And then the first thing somebody says to me when I ask, when was the last time you had the machine serviced, is, well, it's been 6 years, but I haven't used it. So gravity works, right? Like, you lubricate a machine, and when you think about a machine, you generally have a bushing or a bearing, which normally means, like, it depends upon the machine, but they will put a type of metal, normally then is softer than the steel that it goes through, and then through that will be the steel shaft through which everything spins. Now, this is oversimplified, right? But we're just talking about basic machines with upper and lower shafts. That would count for your long arm machine. Anywhere you have two dissimilar metals, you have what is known as galvanic corrosion. And galvanic corrosion, like you think about rust, that's not rust. That is mineral development. And because, by the way, rust is mineral development. But so it's not rusting, but you get mineral development. That happens at an increased rate anywhere there are two dissimilar metals. And so when you lubricate a machine, one of the things that you are doing is you are putting this little thin layer of oil, or, like, depending upon the machine, sometimes a little thin layer of grease that serves as a barrier between these two dissimilar metals. And so the risk you run when a machine sits is that you've got two dissimilar metals in an area where the lubrication is sat at the bottom. And so what's funny is a lot of times machines come in and they have these tight spots. And what I always like, where you're turning it and half the turn it's fine, and then half the turn it's tight. Well, the way I look at that is the lubrication sat on the bottom, and that was the barrier on the bottom, and it wasn't on the top, and you get that mineral development. So that mineral goes around, and when it goes through the lubricated area, it's fine. When it goes through the non-lubricated area, it's not. So, in a perfect world, it's great to have a machine serviced if it's sat for a couple years. One of the questions I always ask people is the machine sewing fine? And they go, yeah, it is. And I go, well, then by all means, use the machine. The risk you run in not servicing a machine that sat for a long time, and this happens, this is the other thing that we run into here. People are like, well, I started it and it worked and everything was fine, and now it's totally bound down. So the other things that'll happen is the lubrication dries out. Some lubrication dries out, it gets sticky, it's like a glue. Some lubrication just kind of evaporates and goes away. When you operate a machine with no lubrication, it gets hot, metal expands, and metal seizes. And so the machine can totally bound down. That's a bigger issue here. Like, I call that a strip and service. On like smaller machines, you're adding probably $40 to $60 to the cost of the service, because the way that we have to fix that is we have to hit the machine with heat. And we try to hit the machine with heat in a way to get certain metals to expand and other metals to not expand. And then we basically have to get galvanic corrosion out of there and then relubricate the machine. And that takes longer. So is it okay to use the machine? Yeah, if it's sewing, I'd say go ahead and use it. Do it with the knowledge that if the machine were to bind down, like lubricate what you can on a long arm, like your needle bar and the hook assembly are generally the two areas. Some long arms have a couple of lubrication ports where you can add a drop of oil. And if the machine works fine, that's fine. If the machine binds down, your dealer may charge you more to fix something like that because it causes more work for them. But not knowing what kind of long arm it is, I can't directly address it. But, just something to consider. I was told to get service on my machine once a year. Should that be more often based? So I'm just looking. It's a Luminaire. So simple rule of thumb on the Luminaire, any brother or baby lock machine should be serviced. On the embroidery machines, every 3 million stitches. So you have a stitch count on that machine. It's like an odometer. You have a stitch count like SCS, which is service count stitches. That's reset every time the machine is serviced. And if you're taking your machine to a dealer who can't change that, go to a dealer who can, or keep track of the total number of stitches. If you're on a baby lock, you don't see the total number of stitches. You only see your service count. If you're on a brother, you see both. But every 3 million stitches or 2 years is going to be what I tell folks, because in this environment, if you don't service it within 2 years, I feel like that's when we see issues on those machines. Machines start to bind down. The hand wheel gets difficult to turn. It's drier here. But yeah, I like, depending upon your use, you most certainly may need to get your machine serviced more than once a year. I find most people either drastically underestimate or drastically overestimate their number of stitches. What do I mean by that? Most people don't pay attention. And the people that are like, oh my God, I use my machine so much, I need to bring it in for service, generally show up. I look at the stitch count on the machine, they've got like 500,000 stitches. And then the people that are like, I just need to get through like these 10 projects before I bring it in. I haven't been sewing that much. They're the ones who bring me machines with like 9 million stitches and big issues. Like I never see people that are like, I never use my machine and they have like 0 stitches. It's always, I don't know what it is. It's always wrong. A handful of you totally pay attention to your stitch count and you don't count like you're paying attention to your stitch count. But like I said, most people seem to either drastically underestimate or drastically overestimate the number of stitches that they use. I did get your video and picture. Thank you. I'm working on ironing that out. It was perfect. We'll get that taken care of over the next couple of days. Thread breaking and shredding. So, since I got it 18 months ago. So it's funny, like routine thread shredding and breaking points to, and like generally is going to point to a burr or something in the machine that is an issue. Do I see machines that have this problem out of the box? So if you're telling me that it's done this since the moment you got it, you know, that's rare. But you know, I would say like I'd be looking for needle strikes on the hook. I'd be looking at bobbin case. I'd be looking at kind of setup. There's little stuff that can cause those issues, like how you hoop the fabric, how stable the fabric is hooped. I mean, the reality is, and I'm not saying this is your scenario at all, but, you know, the shredded thread happens sometimes. So, you know, every now and then I deal with somebody that's like, it's shredding all the time. And like we do a bunch of embroidery and it never shreds for us. And so, you know, one of the challenges with something like that is actually like really figuring it out. Like if you were local to us, what we do oftentimes with a customer is we go, let's sit down and like really work with the machine with you, right? And like, and see what's going on. But the reality is shredded thread is not something that should be happening frequently on these machines. Jeannie's, when she's at full strength, is a pretty prolific stitch adder to her machine and really doesn't deal with shredded thread at all, or very, very rarely does. In fact, like we're waiting for Charles to come because we're going to do total teardowns and services on her machines. But like, I think she's at like 5 or 6 million stitches and like, she's starting to see some of this stuff and she's going like, I need my machine to be serviced. So yeah, like what can you do? Take it to a dealer. I mean, that's, you know, if you're crossing off the other things, could you have Max unlock the door at 10, ladies? When it hits 10, could you just make sure that Max opens? Perfect. You know, I would just tell you if you've kind of run through all of the standards, like changing needles, making sure you're using the right needles, all that kind of stuff, take it to a dealer. and try to take it to a dealer that's going to work with you on it. Generally, here the standard practice would be we polish everything, we do test embroideries. If it doesn't shred for us and we send it home with a customer, kind of the next step is we're like, come in and do stuff here, and that way we can look at everything. But I've got a customer right now that's dealing with a shredding issue. And my comment to her yesterday was it shouldn't be shredding. Like, and people get frustrated and they're like, they want to give up on their machines. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Like, I get that it's frustrating. Sometimes things don't work out perfectly, but like, let us work with you until the machine is operating the way it should be operating. Could a corruption in an embroidery design snap the needle? I don't really think that's likely. Now, that said, if you're using an imported design and the design always snaps a needle in the same location, absolutely, it's the design. If you're doing other designs and it never happens, absolutely, it's the design. People don't like hearing that because you buy a design, you want to do the design, you work on the design. But like, if a design always snaps a needle in the same place, it's just a poorly digitized design. Or if you identify an area in a design that's like super dense and like this was an Anita Good thing, right? Sometimes on the Anita Good designs, they were incredibly dense in certain areas. And so one of the things that happened would be like, hey, you got to slow it down, or you can change your density or something like that. There was like this Anita Good geisha that like one of the sewing groups in our area was doing, and they were having so many issues with the geisha. And the reality was there were just certain areas in the geisha that were super dense. It was like embroidery on top of embroidery on top of embroidery, and that was an issue. So, so not knowing the specific use case scenario for you, Michelle, what I would say is like, is it possible? Yeah. Is it likely? I don't know. I don't think so. But like, if it's a single design and there's like it's breaking needles in the same area every time, I'm like, stop breaking needles. Like, move on and go to a different design. Find a similar design. There's a lot of designs out there. Let's see. Live stream tomorrow. No live stream tomorrow. We don't do live streams on Saturdays. Handy Quilter Infinity. Yeah, Christy, I would actually tell you, like, put a drop oil on your needle bar. Put a drop oil in your hook. If the Handy Quilter is working, then just use it. I have seen bound down Handy Quilters. Like we work on the baby lock, and we do most of the service for Handy Quilter in the area. I feel like I see a lot of people with Handy Quilters. Oh, Christine, I was just joking with Joni earlier about the live stream. Any tips if the auto threader on my Stellaire stopped threading the needle? I would take it into, if MLQ is Mall Queens, I think they're a great shop, and I don't know them personally, but I hear great things, and I would think Mall Queens would fix that for you. In my shop, we would normally do that live, or we'd tell you to come back in an hour or two, and we'd work it in the lineup. And depending upon what we do, I charge anywhere between 15 and like $40 if I have to replace the threader, it's 40. If I have to repair the threader, it's 15. Remind us about the fake organ needles. You talked about it before, I believe. So, what I have told people to beware of is Amazon needles.
Yeah. Okay, sure, absolutely.
Hang on one second.
Yeah,
Oh, door's already unlocked. So, I have not seen fake Schmetz needles, but I have seen I ordered a magazine of organ needles. Hey Max, could you check in? Um, and I ordered a magazine of Groats Beckert needles from Amazon because somebody came in and told me they were buying needles at this like crazy, um, these crazy low prices. And quite frankly, I bought a magazine, like 100 needles for like roughly the price of like 20 or 30 needles through the suppliers that I have that I know and trust. And so, when those needles arrive, now somebody pointed out, and I'm glad you did, that the needles are being made. Class A needles were made in Japan. And now I think they're being made in like India or something. I actually looked this up and I don't remember off the top of my head. They were made in Germany. Groats Beckert, Schmetz, and organ needles were made in Germany when we bought the store 10 years ago. They're now being made in like Pakistan, India. I think one set of the needles are being made in Vietnam. But what was super weird was the magazines of the needles that I bought arrived in a package. It was like 2 packages. So the outer package was this like plastic package, like a snap box plastic package that said made in China. But when you opened them and when you pulled the magazine and needles out, they said made in Germany. Those were definitely bunk needles. And I think, you know, I'm sure folks have heard about counterfeit product on Amazon. Sellers sell on Amazon and they sell whatever they want to sell on Amazon. And the reality is I don't trust needles from Amazon. You're free to do whatever you want. I just don't trust them. Does galvanic corruption happen in older mechanical machines as well? It happens anywhere you have 2 dissimilar metals on top of each other. That's why you lubricate stuff. You know, lubrication not only lubricates, but it serves as that barrier. So yeah, it happens on all machines. Let's see. My issue with shredding and braking was my pressure foot was too high. If you ever change the height of your presser foot, you gotta change it back. And that is a very, very common thing. Like when we see shredding thread, one of the first things we do is we reset and check the height of the presser foot. Because that people change that. Like sometimes you're dealing with something thicker and you change it and then it continues to shred. But that's actually one of the things that we do in the store. And actually it's a very good thing to point out is when we look at the machine, that's actually the first setting at which we look. And then we will reset. There's a setting in the machine where you reset the foot height, where you basically set it up to look at it correctly. Yeah, so let's see. Mighty Hoop, best way to hoop layers. I don't know if that's a question. I don't use the Mighty Hoop, so I can't actually address that. I just don't have the necessary info. Christy, yeah, the Anita Good Designs, especially, it's funny, I don't even know, like Anita Good Designs was so popular for so long, and they've kind of disappeared. Like they're consumer direct these days, and I'm not even sure what they're doing. Somebody at one point was like, they had 50 employees back in the day, and they're down to like 2 employees. But at the end, we were running into lots of issues with their designs being too dense. I think there's something wrong with the machine if screen freezes up between stitching embroideries. Yeah, absolutely. What machine are we talking about, Lynn? I would, if it's a Baby Lock or Brother machine, I would re-download and rerun whatever the last update was. And then if it's one of the higher end machines like Stella or Luminaire, I might even take it to a dealer to have the dealer reset your memory. We've seen some weird things on the Luminaire and Solaris. I feel like I've seen it more on the Solaris than the Luminaire, but I've seen it on both machines where the updates are really, really large, and I like it's almost like there are memory problems in the machine. And I've had a couple of customers that brought me a machine where that was doing really weird stuff where we've reset that memory. That's different than what you can do. You can go in and delete the memory. We can actually reset it, and it just like totally resets and gets rid of everything stored in memory. And and I've had a lot of people tell me that it fixed problems they didn't even realize were problems. They're like, oh, all this stuff is working on my machines I didn't realize. So if it's a Luminaire or Solaris, I might actually recommend taking it to a dealer and having a dealer in diagnostics erase the memory. That erases anything you've stored in the machine, but it doesn't erase your settings. Let's see, needle threader may be out of line or broken. Yeah, and once again, shops can easily fix that. I have an Altair. I would most certainly reset the memory and rerun the most recent update and check and make sure there isn't an update there. That is not normal. Okay, so I've got to get to work. We've run about 10 minutes too long. Couple things. Hello, Sunshine. The kits are done. Somebody asked a question about quilting through the seasons. We're working. We'll get through those certainly by the time we leave for vacation at the end of next week. Hello, Sunshines. The kits are done. We may make roughly 10 more. They are not on the website. We're not going to post those. What we have is sold, and it's funny because when we're through those 10 more, I don't think the ladies ever want to see it again. It is a huge kit. We will be reaching out to those of you that are on our list in order to basically collect payment on those and get those shipped out to you. And last but not least, every Friday we do a giveaway. We didn't do a live stream last Friday. We didn't do a giveaway. We will do a very nice giveaway this week. Haven't even taken a moment to figure out what that's going to be. If we hit 5,000 followers over the weekend, I think we're only like 130 short. We're getting close. It'll be a massive giveaway to celebrate 5,000 followers on YouTube. So remember to like, hit the thumbs up button. Remember to subscribe. And remember to hit that bell icon. That way you don't miss anything when we do it. But there is a question this week. And the way this works is this chat that's happening on the left hand, or well, I guess right hand side of the screen here is chat. The comments happen below. So you have to answer the question I ask in the comments below. And that will happen after the live stream ends. But the question of the week is, what is the feature of your sewing machine you've been dying to learn but haven't learned yet? So once again, what is the feature you are dying to learn on your sewing machine but haven't learned yet? So let's have a big push and hit 5,000 followers over the weekend. And Jeannie will likely be on live streams next week, whether it's Tuesday or not, I'm not sure. And there may be several live streams where we are not here because of conflicting doctor's appointments. But there we go. Have a great day. Make something awesome.